So every community has people who are already making difference. And my hope is that each of us chooses not just to admire them, but to become one of them ourselves. Yeah, in our own small ways. Yeah.
This is a podcast called Walk, Talk, Listen. An attempt to connect people and make this world a bit better by sharing opinions and experiences based on the belief that everyone's perspective is true, albeit partial. My name is Maurice Blom, and I would like to welcome you to yet another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen. Good day, everybody. This is another episode of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. And as always, I'm delighted with today's guest, um, who will introduce himself. But before we go there, though, just a quick comment from my side, in that, um, you know, Alvin and I have worked together for several years now. But today, actually, we're going to learn more about Alvin behind the meetings that I have with them, and the reports and the research. So really looking forward to that, Alvin. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Maurice. It is really an honor to be here on the podcast, Walk, Talk, Listen. And actually, that's quite a name there you came up with. To our listeners, my name is Alvin Andanje. I currently serve as the Africa Regional Coordinator for the Joint Learning Initiative on Faith and Local Communities, commonly known as JLI. I'm currently based in Nairobi, Kenya, where I work with researchers, faith leaders, civil society organizations, and even some development practitioners across the continent to more of try to look at the role of faith communities in development, humanitarian work, and and sustainable development. Well, before we get to all these titles and maybe work stuff, basically, I'm a simple person whose life has been shaped by the community, the traditional African community. I grew up in the western part of Kenya, Western Kenya, in an environment I would term as the traditional African environment where everyone knew each other. And I mean, faith was not confined to Sunday school services and all that. But people genuinely showed up for each other during celebrations and during hardship. For example, things like raising a child. In the African context, a child belongs to the community. Nowadays, a child belongs to the government. But in the traditional African setup, the child belongs to the community, and it was the responsibility of the community, the neighbors, to ensure that a child grows up well. So when I look back at those experiences, for example, growing up in a family of four, I'm the second born son in a family of only sons. I didn't grow up with we are not blessed with a lady or a daughter or a sibling who is a female. But we grew up in a communal setup. I mean, me and my brother, the difference in age is just one. So the others, our firstborn is called Mwachi Andanje, and then I'm Alvin Andanje, and then the one who follows me is by about 6 years. It's called Edgar Andanje, and then our last born, who is currently representing Kenya at a tournament, an under 20 rugby tournament in Uganda.
Oh,
It's
wow.
called Aldrin Aldrin Andanje.
Uh-huh.
So growing up, it was mostly fun because you get to know nearly people across 3, 4, 5 villages, and walking around was peaceful. I mean, if you have been to Kenya, you know that the western side of the country is a bit green. The western, close to Nyanza, which is the Lake Victoria region, and then going up all the way to the North Rift, These are the green areas of Kenya. And if you have looked at the map of Kenya from a climate or rather a climate perspective, you realize that the nearly 60% of Kenya is either arid or semi-arid. But the greener side is on the western side and on the lower side, where continentally that's where many people live. So I cannot say that growing up there was some kind of limitation in terms of accessing basic needs like food,
Mm-hmm.
health, because I consider myself not so privileged, but to some extent, compared to the stories I hear, I consider myself to have been a privileged kid because my dad was a primary school teacher. Mom is still a nurse at a health facility. And I've heard the stories about, or rather, if you heard the stories about someone who grows up with a mom who is a nurse, she doesn't stop being the medic even in the house. So, so with that in mind, and my grandfather, Gadi Karamoja, was I didn't get the chance to really experience life with him so much because he was though he was an agricultural person, he unfortunately passed when I was very young, about 3 to 4 years old. I remember back in around 2000, 2002, I remember going to my grandmother's house, and then I saw this photo on the wall. There was this habit of hanging the head of the home, hanging the photo of the head of the home on the wall. So I went there, and then I looked at the wall. I'm like, who is that person? And then they told me to guess. And I remember there was someone who used to clear bush. I mean, clearing the bush in the farm to make way for maize planting, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to see a person similar to that one. And then I just told my aunts were there and my grandmother. Then I told them, this is the person who helps us to uproot the, or rather to clear the bushes. And they were all laughing. That's your grandfather. I'm like, okay, wow. I almost thought it's like our servant who helps us clear the bush. I was surprised to be told that no, that was your grandfather, and this is years and years after he had
Mm.
passed. So I didn't get to really experience much of life with him, but I remember the part of the hard work because I remember him through now that story that I told you,
Yeah.
through the idea of him being the one clearing the bushes for the family homeland, which is unfortunate. But my grandmother, also, I didn't really get, I have very little recollections of
Mm.
memories with my grandmother from my paternal side, that is. But he was a very humble person.
Mm.
I mean, the only memories that come to mind is us running around her. My cousin and my brother running around her in the evenings,
Mm.
as my father used to maybe going to take the cattle to their sleeping place. So we would run around her as she tells us stories or sings
Mm.
songs. And this went on for like 2 or 3 years before we started now going to school, and then things became a little. The time for that became very limited, and then also there was the she became frail and sickly, which is then now limited the time my time with her. So at a very early age, that is around 8 to 9 to 10 years, we moved with my mom to a more urban area. Not really a town, but at the village level, it's a more urbanized area where she was going to be a school nurse, a secondary school nurse, after finishing her college. Interestingly, I hear stories and I hear my dad brag that, he paid for your mom's fees, school fees. So apparently, my dad supported my mom through school when
Mm.
she was doing her a nursing diploma. So he usually sometimes brags that I took him out to school. Yeah. So upon her being employed as a school nurse at just barely 20 to 30 kilometers away from the rural
Mm.
home in this urban area called Malava town, So it's there that I really began to recollect memories of going to school.
Mhm.
It was like, I mean, living in a in a servants' quarters with the other neighbors, and that's where I begin to form what I can term as real friendships. Huh? Or rather,
Mm.
if you were to ask me who are your childhood friends, most of the people I'll mention are the kids we grew up with in that secondary school civil servants' quarters, and that really began to introduce me to the communal nature also. I would have expected that now that you're from your community level, your rural area, where in Kenya we live, or rather we live based on the migration lines. We live in a clan or in a tribe. So at the family level, you have the father, mother, and all that. Then you have the clan, people who are related to you. So I expected when we moved from my clan to a new place, that the communal nature of that I was used to at home, the care and the friendliness would a little bit cease. But then you go in a new place and then you begin forming new relationships, where now also the outside, rather because it's a fenced school, and kids for the civil servant, or rather for the servants are supposed to play within the compounds. But
Mm.
then we also formed relationships with the outside community, which was very welcoming, and even the different clans that we used to interact on. Also, just trying to make up for that experience that I was missing, maybe from, or rather, I thought I would miss when I came from the rural area. But that was really an interesting aspect of the African setup itself.
Mhm.
So that's where we stayed, or rather, we lived for about 8 years
Mhm.
before again we moved. Me going to secondary school, and then now those relationships begin to be a little strained because now you're not meeting each other. But
Mm.
as I had mentioned earlier, I consider myself to have been very, very privileged as a person because my dad was working, my mom was working later on then, and then I had these siblings that we used to play with. Sometimes we used to quarrel with my elder brother,
Mm.
interestingly, but right now we are the best of friends, which is weird. I mean, it's always a tendency for kids that follow each other very close. If you're 20 years, then he's 19, or you're 21, he's 20. There's always fighting for playing toys, for space, for home chores, and all that. But growing up, that bond has been stronger than I ever could imagine,
Mm.
as compared to my younger brothers. No? To my younger brothers, they are responsibility. To my big brother, we are equals to some
Mm.
extent, because we can talk about the historical stuff about our family. Unfortunately, or rather, I would say the only thing that also happened to me, or rather to my big brother, while we were growing up, he developed some kind of a condition, no? Which affected, or rather had some kind of mental health impact on him. I
Mm.
remember when we joined school, we joined in the same class, the same grade. So we were going to school together, but then at some point he became sick, which I think affected the brain somehow for close to 1.5 years.
Mm.
So it was really a tough period for the family, because then there is the issue of maybe someone has, in Africa, we always try to associate a condition to witchcraft. So there was those claims that maybe someone has has performed some kind of a ritual or other witchcraft against my brother. But it was something that was very traumatizing, even looking at him now, because sometimes he would, though he didn't get to the level where he'd say he wants to run and or rather walk naked in the markets and all that, but he was always, he needed the care of
Mm.
people who were close. But now you're not in the village; you are at a new place, a place where these are friends. They're not clan people, but they are friends. So it became more of my responsibility as the younger brother to be looking after, or rather taking care of my brother. He was in good health, in the sense that he could walk, he could talk, but mentally um, for about 1.5 years. That really affected him, and it meant that he wouldn't go to school. It became even difficult for me sometimes on weekends to play because now I can't go out to play with friends. When my brother, I can't leave my brother back home, and if I had to leave him in the house, then it meant that something will be spoiled or he might run into a vehicle on the road because there was a road close by. So that really limited my playing time as a kid. But always, kids find a way to play.
Hmm.
So you would find that because of this scenario, then my friends from the other houses, kids to teachers for the other secondary school, will come over to our place and we'll play the small childhood games like, I don't know if you know it, the pebbles game. Children play with the small pebbles and then you put in a hole. There's a way in which I can't remember it, but there's a way in which we used to count scores. So we do that and develop and play even at our house, or at the compound at our house. So apart from that, and of course my brother had to now go a class behind me. So if I'm in grade 6 or in class 6, he would be in class 5, and he's my big brother. So that really affected him and me because now ideally you would expect that the big brother will be a class ahead or at least will be in the same class with the younger brother. So sometimes when you are playing, people would throw a jibe at him, and that will really get him angry because he not healed. When he came back, when he further enrolled to school, he didn't really wasn't really that calm as as he used to be. So sometimes he'd have those scenarios where he'd get very angry and take a weapon, wants to hit someone. So I'll have to be called where I am. Alvin, your brother is not okay. Please come. Then I have to take
Mm.
him home. So we had those episodes
Yeah.
on various occasions. Uh, uh, and I
And,
think,
and
sorry, yes.
yeah, so sorry, Alvin, a quick question. Is that still the case or not anymore?
Well, right now is very healthy. I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
happened, but of course, my mom took him to hospitals and all that. When I asked my dad, he mentions it that he really also doesn't understand what was happening. But right
Mm-hmm.
now, he's married with kids. He's
Hey,
doing well.
great.
But something that I always observe
Mm-hmm.
that anger has not really is still there somehow. I mean, but the other weird thing is that he's very, very caring.
Mm.
He would go out of his way to really help you if you I asked for anything. If you ask him, please, would you help me do this? He will go out of his way, and I think that's to me, and it's because of that bond we developed while growing up. Me and him, we have that respect. That's why sometimes I have to ensure I call every day to just check on him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
that bond is really still strong.
yeah.
Um.
So occasionally we would fight.
Mm-hmm.
When we get growing up, of course, as I told you, when you're sibling
Yeah.
rivalry, when you're really close to each other, fighting is normal for toys, for home chores.
Mm-hmm.
So when we grew up, I'm like, okay, so we are very, very close. And it's because also we have that family history of what used to happen that the younger ones don't have. Or even if you
Mm.
told them, or even if they know, they did not experience it because now when they're growing up, he was now okay going to school and all that.
You were mentioning that you live in the well, you were born and raised in the western part of Kenya. Was that close to Uganda or still far away? So that's question one, and then question two is the reason that you moved on a a couple of times. Was the main reason because of the school, or was it because your parents found a job somewhere else and then you moved?
Well, Western Kenya, I'm in Kakamega County. I was born in Kakamega County. It's close to the border,
Okay.
but not the border county. So you have to come from Kakamega County, then you go to Bungoma or Busia, which are now the
Mm-hmm.
border counties, but they are all Western Kenya. So it's quite
Okay.
some distance from
Yeah.
where we want to the border. As for the movement, My dad has never moved since he was born. He has been residing at our at the ancestral place. But it's my mom who moved when she got a job as a school nurse.
Mm-hmm.
She moved to this Malava town, which is about 30 kilometers from the ancestral home. So and then from there also she moved again when she got a job at a National Referral Hospital
Mm-hmm.
in Eldoret, which is now quite a distance now from home. So and I think those are the only places she's moved to till now, and she's approaching retirement.
Okay. But you moved, right? Because of schools, of the
Yeah,
school.
of course. For me, I've moved
Yeah.
to when I after the primary school level,
Yeah.
I moved to secondary school, which is now a boarding school. It was my
Yeah.
first time to wear
Oh, okay. Now I
school
get it.
shoes.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
thought you were going back home, but you were staying at a boarding school.
and yeah, I was staying at a boarding school,
Yeah.
and then from there, then that's when I came to Nairobi, which is the capital city,
Yeah.
at university.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. So, in a nutshell, I consider myself privileged. My
Mm-hmm.
childhood was that difficult in terms of accessing basic needs. We were not rich, but basic needs. We were not going a day without meals, and we were healthy apart from a few episodes here and there. So I consider myself as best. If you do an average of people in the village, I was privileged. Yeah. So when I look back, I think those experiences quietly formed my understanding that development is sometimes not based on infrastructure, but the connections that you develop with people. That's why I mean how you build relationships, how you look at people's dignity, and specifically the care. Are you caring enough to walk alongside one another? Are you caring enough to hold each other's hand the way in which the communal communities do? They don't have a lot of infrastructure development, but they have something even better, which is the social capital and the togetherness that sometimes, and I think now that I've lived in the urban areas, we are missing out on that. And I've always had this fascination about how ordinary people create extraordinary change. I once asked my dad, why were you called Andanje? Because in the Luya, I'm a Luya by tribe in Kenya, in Western Kenya. So when I look at our lineage, we don't have the name Andanje. So I asked him, where did this name Andanje come from? Because there is Karamoja who is also, and a great grandparent and all that. Well, why Andanje? Then he told me, Andanje used to be like the trailblazer of this region. He was not a clan person, our clan member, but he used to be a trailblazer in the sense that he used to support schools, he used to support people to go to school. And so our fathers, when they saw such a person, they began to really admire him because he was paving the way for many people to access education in the far lands, like now in Nairobi, in other schools and all that. So parents saw it fit to continue to immortalize his name by calling us Andanje. And that's how you
Mm.
find, even in the region, in Malava constituency where I come from, you find so many Andanjes, but they are not related by blood, only because that person used to be there
Yeah.
who really helped people in terms of uplifting themselves in accessing education.
Mm.
So that really bodes with my fascination of how this ordinary person can create extraordinary change. That curiosity is what has led me to into development work,
Uh-huh.
trying to do some research and community engagement. And today I have this privilege of supporting collaborations across more than 20 African countries. I mean, during with projects such as the FPCC that we did with the UNICEF, Millions for Peace, trying to move around and support, offer yourself to these countries. So
Can I
that
ask you something about that, Alvin?
is
In
yes.
terms of, so I understand that, maybe no, the role of your last name played in maybe pushing you towards development work. Um, but was there something like a defining moment when you realized that development work was your calling, or the direction you wanted to go, or did it just gradually evolve?
Well, I would say it's gradual. It's something that's been building up by the people around me and also the people I meet. And I remember one of my mentors always said, "Alvin, life is like a mosaic of events. Things just pile up, arrange themselves to make a very good impression." So this has been gradual. My elder cousin is also in the field, in the development field. But remember, when I began at the university level, I enrolled to do development communications, rather communications. Then at the master's level, development work, and I'm hopeful that in the next by next year, I'll also begin to do my PhD in also development work. I'm still looking at the thesis topic and all that, so that I can see how to bring all that together. But I would say it's been gradual. Of course, coming from when you're in the village and everything is going so well, you'd imagine you are at the best place in the world. But now when you when you travel and you realize, oh, some people have tarmac roads, you're like, okay. I mean, some people really access health. They get to health centers on time. Mothers can give birth at a hospital safely without the risk of the babies dying. Then you're like, okay, so there's something that needs to be done. And then you come to realize that also there are so many organizations who are really putting in the efforts to ensure that they uplift these communities. So that curiosity develops, and of course, I find myself initially I was really thrilled by being the communicator, trying to communicate this development to, or rather communicating, being the voice of the people, trying to communicate what the people are going through, and then perhaps to try and show their needs, their concerns, and then someone can come and work on it. But that was that, and then I ended up meeting these through that communications role that I was doing back then. I ended up meeting people now who begin to expose me to development work, how the different aspects of society work, and how the government could work, but now the government is not really that effective in doing this. So we, as the civil society, this is what we are doing. And I learned this a lot from Dr. Agnes Abom at TABCO. I know you might have met her before. She used to be the WCC Central Committee moderator, and that's at the global that's in Geneva. So by interacting with the many people that used to come at TABCO, I realized, wow, there's a lot that is going, and it's not just in Kenya, because now these events, these activities, these projects are being rolled out in other countries. I'm like, okay, so these societies have various needs, but they're not being done by the government. They're being done by this civil society, and this civil society that I used to work with is not just the entire civil society working with a faith-based organization. So it's a very large field out there that is why it's involved in development work besides the
Yeah.
government.
And you were mentioning that you have worked or visited more than 20 countries. Has there been one community that fundamentally changed your thinking?
I would say
Sure.
not really change, but affirm. What I used to look to think about what life needs to be like, and this was, I think, Uganda. When we went to Uganda for some activities, and I've gone to Uganda severally, but we went for an activity, and the manner in which the people take care of guests. I remember we went with a colleague of mine while we were at Tabco. We went to evaluate a project there, and we are wondering where will we sleep because it was in the rural areas. Huh? They don't have hotels there. But when we met the program person, they told us, "Don't worry, here you can even sleep in my home. There's no worry. And I looked at that. This guy took us to the northern part of Uganda. He took us to some rural home, and then we were welcomed by the. It's more of it's more like a homestead. It's not just one house, like homestead. Then they made space for us. We slept there for like 2 or 3 or 4 days when we were collecting data in that region. Then we moved to another homestead. So I looked at that. I'm like, okay, so they don't really know us that much, huh? But they are willing to share what they use on a daily basis. Because now this is a horizontal hotel. There's no one saying this is a guest room, and there are no guest rooms in African. Most of these traditional African houses, there are no guest rooms. So there's a children's room, and then there's a bedroom for for the parents. But they made space for us because we were only two, and that really struck me as okay. So you can go anywhere, but if there's the fundamentals of care and welcoming guests, be someone you don't know, a stranger, because even this program, the project person, we had never met. It's just that we got the contract and then we went there, and then they're like, okay, let's take care of them. And then when you engage with the community, I don't know if you've ever been to Uganda, but they are still a little traditional, and they have not really adopted the urban life that much. Just if you go outside Kampala, there is still that communal approach to life where one's needs come first, and whatever you have, even if it's small, you share. And also they have very good food in Uganda. It's one of the greenest countries in central, toward the central Africa. I mean, and food is in abundance. So I really found Uganda to be a place that boded well with what I believed about living in a communal life, where you care about the next person.
I would like to go back to the late Dr. Agnes Abouan, you refer to. She used to work for World Council of Churches. You had the privilege of working with her. What did she teach you that still stays with you today?
Well, I mean, I would say I learned from her. Not really. She didn't like. We had so many meetings, and I learned, of course, the technical aspects of doing things, but in terms of behavior, she was really against shortcuts and corruption. I mean, that you could in Kenya, corruption is a big part of the daily life. If you are moving from your house and then you get caught by a police officer, maybe you for doing something, maybe even if you're driving, maybe you forgot to turn at the turn, or maybe you went. Then you just got by the police officers. They will demand something from you, which is sad. Huh? But Dr. Agnes had a way of working, especially in I mean, of course I didn't meet her in her mid ages. I met her when she was getting older a bit. She was very, very firm and straightforward. And also, I didn't learn this from directly from her telling me to do this and this, but she was very, very firm in how she handled the clients, handled the partners, and even the stories I continue to hear from the colleagues who worked with her. They were like, okay, Agnes, we really miss Agnes because she would stand up. She was very small in stature. And if you looked at her, the way she's talking, you wouldn't really uh, uh, imagine she's tough, but she was very, very tough. And she wouldn't take any shortcuts because she always believed that if you do good, something good will happen to you. And I learned this because when I was working also on her book, she was trying to recollect all her life's journey and put in some thoughts. We became really close. I used to spend times at her house just talking about very, very interesting stories while she was growing up and all that. And I really learned that she followed this straightforward path, not taking any shortcuts, and that really sticks with me even today. I mean, and just the mere belief that if you're doing something good, then somehow nature paves your way. But if you are to do those shortcuts in maybe getting something, if you use a shortcut that is maybe hurting another person, maybe obstructing someone face from getting the same services or the same good at a fair in a fair way, then there are problems that would come your way that you would not really even explain why. But
Mm.
if you remain straightforward, then there's a way in which nature answers. Yeah, yeah,
Can I ask you to hold that thought in terms of coming off maybe of an example and how those lessons from her have helped you in your work and the piece of work I would like to lift up because you have worked on climate justice and climate migration, right? Um, so within that field,
yeah, yeah.
the research or the activities that you have done, um, while keeping the lessons, um, you know, that Dr. Agnes Abuam provided you with, can you give an example in how that played out then in what you were doing?
The climate migration paper that we did was an effort to more of look into, or rather to investigate how faith actors contribute, or what place they hold in this climate migration, or rather the pressures that are there to their people in terms of how they adapt to climate migration and the changing climate and all that. So we did a round of listening dialogues in Africa, in South Asia, and also Latin America. So then we collated this into in some kind of a report that we have published on our website, and we also have a specific channel on our Weave platform where we are trying also to continue that evidence generation on how faith actors contribute, or rather their role in the climate migration, and how we are really adapting to that. So it was quite an interesting experience on the thoughts of how these faith actors are really playing a role. For example, as I was going to say, there's this imam who shared that because of the pressures of maybe drought, for example, in places like in Isiolo or in northern Kenya, sometimes you find that people who are hard hit by drought, for instance, would look up to the religious leaders to offer some kind of support. And because a religious leader welcomes all, for example, they would give space for them to sleep in the at the mosque compound. They would try to find something for them to eat and maybe drink and all that. But then there was one question that was being posed. No one really goes to these religious leaders to ask them, then how are you when you go back to your house? Because these religious leaders also have families. When they go back home, after listening, being the listening ear to all these problems that come from, or rather are occasioned by climate migration, people moving in, people requiring you to be the safe space, people sharing or rather pouring out their concerns into you, and you're also humane. So you were posing a question that sometimes people expect a lot from religious leaders, and religious leaders offer a lot, but then who cares about the carer or the caregiver? In the sense that if this religious leader goes back home, of course, if she is a lady and if he's a man, they have a spouse, and most of the time, and which is most likely, whatever trauma that they have accumulated in their religious leader work, that trauma sometimes tends to be exhibited back in the house. That's why you find that sometimes you hear claims that this religious leader is very, very respected, but then the family, at the family level, it's not the case, because now they are the ones who are exposed to the effects, or are rather vulnerable to the trauma that religious leaders accumulate when they are in service. So it's quite an interesting report that our listeners can check it out, and of course, if they have time, they can also share their thoughts and their experiences, especially in the faith arena, and how they've been experiencing climate change and how they adapt to it.
And Alvin, while you were part of that research, were there
Yeah.
you know lessons that you had learned from Dr. Agnes Abouam that you used and then that were helpful for you while dealing in this with this situation?
Well, I would say maybe just facilitation. Perhaps, of course, the rest is now the technical aspects that are an accumulation or rather the skills that you accumulate after interacting with or rather after learning from various projects and all that. But the facilitation aspect and being a listener is a very big aspect of course, it's called a listening dialogue. So you have to really listen to all voices. These communities uh, have a lot of knowledge or experiences that sometimes go unnoticed because I'll just give an example of FBOs who come with maybe a particular way of doing things, and then they might want to implement in that way. But perhaps listening to how the community wants to approach that development idea is very important. And that listening aspect that I learned from Agnes Abom. And of course, even at GLI, we do have this listening dialogue approach, and which is under this fair and equitable initiative, where we really give priority to the local community's voice. The local community plays a crucial part because they are the reservoirs of knowledge when it comes to how the context
Mm.
behaves, how the context can be improved, and all that. So that ability to listen to everyone and really understand that sometimes you might learn more by listening and not really just talking.
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, thanks for that. You know, listening is definitely an important part of the work of the Joint Learning Initiative. And by the way, for the listeners, Alvin, you just mentioned FBOs. For those who don't know what it stands for, faith-based organizations. Um, but in close relation with listening and learning is evidence and research. Um, and you and I and our colleagues and our community, we spent a lot of time talking about evidence, learning, and research. What I would like to ask you: has there ever been a moment when the evidence surprised you, or even challenged you, something you strongly believed in?
Uh, Most of the time, I mean, after investigation of this, or rather prior to conducting a research project or something, there are things you expect. Though academics dictate that please don't form perceptions. But of course, from investigating secondary data, you get to learn more about the context even before you begin. So sometimes, especially as I had mentioned, this climate migration paper that we did, and how it turns out that sometimes in trying to respond, or rather, we might ask more of religious leaders, for example, because largely we are looking at the contribution of religion and the role that they play on these thematic areas. We focus more on that, and sometimes there are things. If you are collecting data, they would let you know that we do this and this and this. We've been running this project and this project. But what has really surprised me so far has been the potential of sometimes religion to be misused. Growing up, I always thought something religious is moral and is good for many people. But sometimes, and because I've been working on these projects, for example, on GBV, yeah, gender based on peace building, that really surprised me is the potential of sometimes religion to be misused or for text to be misinterpreted. Because we hear, for example, in terms of gender based violence, you hear of how the religion can play a very crucial role in shaping behavior, and also trying to, they can be a crucial safe space for people to come and share about what they're going through, and then link this to regulators or even places for safeguarding. But when now you flip the coin and then you ask the question, or rather now you talk to the community, and then you hear that some community members saying, some of these things, even religious leaders do it this way, or they advise us we do it this way. I don't want to mention specific religions, but Sometimes this is how we have been told that a man should be doing this, a woman should be doing this. And so that potential for religion to have some negative impact on communities, I didn't expect that. But when evidence comes out and showing that there's a potential here that some of these texts are being, or other scriptures are being misinterpreted, misinterpreted, and it's actually perpetuating these harmful practices. That really shocked me in terms of what I had maybe thought a religion is like.
I would like to further piggyback a little bit on research and the evidence, or looking also at your bio. I think you're someone who spends a lot of time turning research into practical guidance, and that's also one of the things that your current organization JLI is trying to do. Why is that so difficult? And why have you learned? What have you learned about making evidence actually useful?
Well, I mean, evidence in its own, no? Sometimes is considered to be something so technical, something that a technical group has to look at it. And sometimes the ways in which the technical group disseminates or visualizes that particular evidence, piece of evidence to be used, is not the way in which, it's not in a format in which the local community or rather the person implementing wants to consume it. So in my experience is that sometimes while you in the path of generating evidence, and this could be by academics, by practitioners and all that, that path needs to be a path that is collaborative. You don't work alone, you work with other stakeholders who might want to use this evidence, such that they have a clue, or rather they can share something that is useful. You don't leave them behind, then you come up with an evidence product speaking about a particular thing that they really don't know how, because there have been scenarios when you're doing, for example, validation workshop for a piece of evidence that you have uncovered, and then they're asking about how can we use this. I mean, how do we get this to the lower level local community? I mean, because it sounds all, for example, one thing they said is the jargon, and that's why I really like in my work at JLI, I really like how we are trying to build these regional learning hubs where we bring together the local actors, the practitioners, the academics, because the claim has always been that most of this knowledge is generated by practitioners and academics, and it's in a format that cannot be understood by the local community, which needs to really consume this, or rather, which needs to really implement whatever they have found out and really interact with the documents and see if they can uplift or rather they can have some kind of impact on development, on developing their own communities. So it really baffles me that so far there are those who are trying to package evidence in a way that the local communities can also feel a part of and they can understand, or even different audiences or different development audiences can also interact with. But it's still a challenge. I wouldn't say that we have really achieved it as a sector, not as an organization, but as a sector. Is still really a challenge because there are those who really see value in, for example, a translation, basically translating the evidence piece into a local language can really play a part. There are those who see a fit in trying to, every time you do an evidence product, try to come up with some kind of a toolkit on how the recommendations can be implemented, and also try as much as possible. And this, as researchers, sometimes we miss out. Once we do research, once we have collected data, done the final report, there's something that we always miss, going back to give feedback to the community that we have been working with throughout the research process. So, in a nutshell, that is it. You need to involve people, all the stakeholders, before doing it, while doing it,
Hmm.
and then after
Okay.
doing it.
Yeah, no, very good point. So before doing it, during doing it, and then after doing it. What maybe my translation is what we try to do. What needs to happen is that more different groups, they need to be connected. And if they're connected, maybe they can start talking with each other. And that's what I also hope that this podcast is contributing to, Alvin, connecting people, right? We are connected. You connect you with the listeners. I'm going to connect you with the previous guest. And the previous guest has a question for you.
What are you doing today to assure that the childhood version of you one day is proud of you?
Wow. That's a good one. I hope everything. But on a serious note, I think if the little Alvin look at the small things that we are doing, not the grand things that maybe doing big projects, but the small everyday things that we do. For example, the walk that I did. I mean, while along the way you're walking, and then someone asks you, why are you guys walking? What's happening? Because now we didn't have a banner saying we are doing this and this, as most organizations will do. We're just alone out of the few group of people. So when someone asks you, what are you doing? Then you say, okay, we're just trying to raise awareness that there are people out there who are sleeping hungry. And so we are just doing this as part of, I think, just trying to recognize, maybe raise that awareness that please, as you eat your meal in the evening, remember that there's someone just next door, or maybe just at your gate, who has no meal. So that maybe perhaps that person, if that person is touched, then they can think about taking a small piece of what they're eating, and then giving that person who's at the gate, or on the road there, or even just giving them a few coins for them to go and buy something to eat. So those, it's not a very big thing. It's a very small things that you would do every day, that can add up to be can mean a lot to someone, because sometimes not all of us can do the big things. We can't all donate a lot of money to a project and all that. But if you can find it in your heart to think about the dignity of another person in a very positive way, and always ensure
Mm.
that you try your best to preserve that dignity in every opportunity you are present to them, how you look at them, how you perceive their actions. You try to keep it at the fundamental level that this person's dignity is a priority. Then, of course, and I think that will really solve most of the problems in the world. If you consider a human being as humane, being human to a human being at the very fundamental level, then all these problems that we think about in the world, or that they want to see on the news, will not exist. So perhaps, I hope a young Alvin will look at the small things that I do, and also just smiling. If you see, I mean,
Mm.
someone along the road, you say hi, and then you smile. A smile is very, very infectious. So the small things that we're doing every day, I hope Alvin, a young Alvin, will be proud.
Yeah. And just for the listeners, Alvin. So what Alvin is was alluding to is he just finished his part of this year's 100-mile walk. Well, you all know that this particular podcast is a spin-off of a 100-mile walk that I started in 2012, and actually now has evolved into, a 100-mile walk that is not only done by me, but by different people that are related with the JLI community. And Alvin last Saturday walked 38,
Yeah, 38.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
38 kilometers. So he, with his walk, he contributed to that. This year we are at 71 miles, I think, 70 miles something. We hope as a community to walk more than 100 miles before the end of the year. So we had a walk, colleague Noor, who walked in Islamabad. We had myself walking in New York. We had Susie, a JLI community member, walking in Boston. And now Alvin walked in Kenya. And we will have people walking in Washington, D.C. and in Singapore, and hopefully in some more places. So really thank you for that. And I'm 100% sure that little Alvin is really proud. Uh, you know what you did, Alvin. Um, And if people want to support, they should go to 100mile.org and support, any of the walkers that you see there, or add your own name
Agree.
and walk, contribute your miles to this initiative. Um, yeah, your question for the next guest, Alvin.
Wow. Okay. I don't know who the next guest is, but uh, I would wish to maybe let me just ask this: can he or she share a moment in their life when listening changed their perspective more than speaking, and maybe what did that experience teach them? Yeah, because
Okay, I
listening
like that.
really plays a big part in unlocking emotions, unlocking openness. So I really like it when we and your yeah, the show, the podcast itself is walk talk listen. I really like the listen part. I mean, I also like talking and of course walking, but listening gives space for people to also connect. Once you listen, you're encouraging someone to, or rather, you're showing someone that you value what they are saying, and you really are empathetic to whatever they're sharing, and perhaps also you can speak from a point of understanding what they're talking about, and then how you're making them feel.
Yeah, let's continue to on that about listening. When I think about listening, I often think about music. And so music is very important to me. And I have a question about music for all my guests. And most of my guests find that the most difficult question, as you and I already, quickly discussed before we started recording. So my question about the music is, um, can you please share a piece of music or a song that for a big part embodies what you are about, Alvin? And um, tell us, please explain why you choose this piece of music or song, and then we will add that to a playlist that we have developed on Spotify. If you go to hashtag walk talk listen, you see all the songs and pieces of music that were selected by our guests.
Okay. I mean, I'm quite diverse when it comes to my choice of music. It depends on the mood and so many things, and also whatever I was listening to when I was young, and now maybe in early 20s and now in my 30s is different. But so I'm getting into a lot of jazz nowadays. But one song that has always stood out for me, and I think I've heard it for a very long time, and it's very, very simple. It was by Louis Armstrong, I believe. Uh, I don't know. It was about something, What a Wonderful World, perhaps. I don't know if that's the name of the song, but it goes like this: I see trees of green, and Red Rose says too. I mean, the way he speaks about nature, and of course, not all what, not all
Hmm.
the lyrics that he sings. I don't agree. Maybe I don't agree with all of it, but he speaks about nature a lot. He places you in a space where everything is peaceful, is calm, and I always imagine that anyone listening to it will find happiness. It creates that calm environment. I don't know if you've listened to it or ever heard of it, but it's, it
I
creates a
know the
kind
song.
of
Yeah.
happiness. And there's a place where he mentions the colors of the rainbow. I mean, the colors of the rainbow, it now brings out the diversity in the feelings. Huh? So you say that anyone all over the world can enjoy the song, and you can think about the diversity in the world, and how we are all supposed to work together for a happy and calm world.
Okay. And and that's, really speaks about what you try to be, or what you hope, you know people will perceive when they work with you and when they meet you. Um, yeah, no, I like that. And we actually, that particular song is already part
Oh.
of the playlist. So there's nothing to add, but that doesn't matter. It's maybe also nice to know for you that there are more people that consider that particular song as their, go-to song, and the message of it. So thank you for sharing that. Um, our work, our research work, learning, mutual learning, understanding, we ask a lot of questions. That's part of it. Outside of listening, there is also asking questions, right? And what's a question you are still carrying, one that you don't yet have the answer to?
Wow. Okay. um, I still, I'm not quite sure if it's a question or just a concern, but I have some concerns about how we're going to really, and if we are really doing enough to end inequality in the world in all its aspects. That's an area that I still have concerns, and how, and if the manner in which you're approaching it would give us the best results. In terms of research, perhaps I understand there's a lot that's being put forward in terms of trying to understand inequality, but I also have some concerns in terms of if we can really achieve an end to inequality, then what would be the best strategy? And of course, from a bottom up kind of point of view, looking at the local community level and their voices. How then do we end inequality by perhaps, and how, or what's the role of these local communities in terms of ending that inequality? Yeah.
Okay, if you allow me to translate that into that this is a worry that you have, um, where do you still see hope then in terms of trying to tackle this?
Well, of course, there's a lot of encouragement in the number of people, or rather in the number of organizations who are really putting their foot forward in terms of bringing an end to inequality. But still, there's still a lot to be done. I mean, we are currently in a world of, just an example, we are currently living in a world that is technologically very advanced. I mean, the speed at which you're advancing in technology is something else. We are going to the moon. There's even talk of creating a life in the moon or even in space and things like that. But there are still millions of people who are struggling with access to food, healthcare, or education. And it gets even more worrying when you look at the kind of money being put in technological advancements and what is available for maybe creating opportunities for people maybe to get food, to access healthcare. If you look at those amounts, it's almost like buying a toy expensively when the neighbor's kid is going hungry. So that really is of concern in the sense that our priorities as a world seems to be a little, of course, not all organizations, but some, their priority is more into actualization than really meeting the basic needs of, or rather the basic global needs. Yeah. So where, oh, your question was where,
So I'm going to
uh,
push back a little bit because so where do
yeah.
you then still see hope, or
Well,
not at all?
I see hope in the sense that there are
Hmm.
organizations who are still putting their best foot forward, their best feet forward in trying to
Further.
advocate, going to chip in some money, implement projects, programs that target this inequality. But still, there's a lot to be done, and perhaps uh, the entities that can help with meeting that gap, maybe the priorities keep changing, and they keep changing very fast. For example, the current civil society environment that we are in, uh, the priorities by most of the maybe donors, partners at the very global level seems to have been affected by the recent changes, for example, in the US, The recent policy changes in the US and some of the other European countries that are also shifting to other priorities. And now, of course, the global, some of the conflicts you are hearing in the Middle East, some of that money being spent even in Ukraine and Russia, the Russia conflict, all those funds being used in a conflict, and then also creating more inequality gap in the sense that even in those conflicts, there are people who had houses who now don't have houses, who had food now they don't have food. So I don't think it's a lack of means to do. I think it's a limitation in the will to do than a lack of means to do. Yeah. But I find
So,
encouragement
yeah.
also in the potential of religious leaders to hold to be the moral voice to society. For example, the WCC still plays a very big role in pointing out some of these things. Even the Vatican also continues to play that role. So coming from a faith-based sector, I still get that encouragement that even though we're not there yet, there are still some people who think about it and who can speak freely about it. And perhaps by being compassionate, at some point, action would really yield.
And is that enough for you to continue doing your work?
Well, yeah, it's enough because it's an encouragement, and action begins by really knowing that you're not alone. Just like a walk, when
Hmm.
you walking alone is quite something else. But if you see someone encouraging you along the way, maybe sending you even a message, where are you? Are you close to finishing? That accompanying you along the way really encourages you to finish. So when I hear various global entities also throwing in their voice, sharing their experiences, and saying, "Please prioritize this and this," there's that encouragement for us to continue. And as I said, the young Alvin, of course, in my own view, in my own capacity, I would go for the small things where you continue to not to overlook the person next to you if they are going through something, maybe. And then if you listen, if you give some safe space for them to say something to you, and then you say something, exchange emotions, and then you get to understand each other. Perhaps they will open up and say, I've gone 2 days without eating something. And then you're like, okay, I have something here, please, let's go eat. But if we don't develop that listening culture, then it becomes very difficult to understand. And this issue of hunger, people tend to think of hunger, and then they think of someone who is very emaciated with the ribs coming out in a desert. But sometimes people are close to us who are really struggling. I mean, the bills are piling up. They can't really, even they find it very embarrassing to ask unless you've really given them that safe space to really say, I've been paying
Mhm.
school fees for my children, for my sisters, my siblings. I'm left with nothing. I'm really on the brink. They won't share that, but that is hunger. This is someone who's going through a lot, and maybe even just a shoulder to lean on will be enough for them to have that hope. So I really get that encouragement, especially from the faith-based actors and leaders, that is.
Mhm. Alvin, these conversations always go fast. So I really have to thank you for today's conversation, for everything you do, for who you are, for sharing your story today. I really encourage people to check out the 100mile.org, to figure out what the 100 Mile is about, and see how Alvin contributed to that particular campaign. It was really an extraordinary walk where he was lucky to be accompanied by a couple of people as well. And I think in the coming weeks we will have some of your video footage and your story shared. So I encourage people to check that out as well. For now, before we close, is there any question that I did not ask you today that I should have asked you, Alvin?
Well, you didn't ask me my age, so. But yeah, I mean, I think we've covered a lot. I don't know if we left anything out, huh? But I just find satisfaction in also speaking about some of these things. I had not spoken about them in a very long time. So perhaps even the podcast itself is helping me also to relieve some of those, and even to reflect on what we are doing and if it's enough to create that impact that we really envision as at a personal level, at an organizational level, and even as a sector in general. So at the moment, I don't think there's any other question that I would want to address, but maybe just to stress that I've really learned that the world, or rather that changing the world isn't really about doing extraordinary things, and it's more often it's something about doing the ordinary things with extraordinary consistency, doing something but doing it consistently, not just once in a while. And I really admire how you've been doing this work for the last couple of years, and is now gaining that momentum. Hopefully, in the next few years, we'll still be doing it, and perhaps we'll even be having caravans of working with us. So every community has people who are already making difference, huh? And my hope is that
Mm,
each of us chooses not just to admire them, but to become one of them ourselves. Yeah, in our own small
mm,
ways. Yeah.
great. Okay, thanks, Alvin, and all the best. And well, you and I talk almost on a daily basis, but this was a special conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I learned, uh, a lot, and I'm sure the listeners will as well.
Thank you
So
so
take
much.
care.
Go the extra 100 mile. Maybe it ain't just time. Thank you for listening to Walk, Talk, Listen. Please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram.